recording. It's not streaming yet though. And we are live.
Hi there, I'm Ted Nelson. I'm here with James Risberg, and tell me your name.
Joshua Matetorre.
And this conversation began with a comparison between Xanadu and Twitter, which I found absolutely outrageous. That revolts me, but the point being that Xanadu is a way of creating documents which have an individual point of view rather than being an outpouring of various points of view in one blog.
So maybe just a bit of a recap of what we did. Like you said, we started with Twitter as Xanadu.
Closer and louder, I think.
We started with Twitter as Xanadu, which I've mentioned to Ted before. Doesn't like the comparison, and we started to explore the reaction to that, how they differ meaningfully, and
that's like what's the difference between an octopus and the Empire State Building? I mean, where do you start?
Well, that's a good question. Do we want to switch to that topic?
No.
And Josh was kind of digging a little bit into saying that Ted's reaction was informational. It was educational in that it cleared up some thinking. Do you want to unpack a little bit about what you gleaned?
Well, here's the phrase I use. One individual creating a clean document with a point of view rather than a cloud of reactions, which the cloud of reactions model has been all over computer forums since the very beginning. And that's not the same as documents created with a point of view.
And I think that was the important thing that Ted pointed out when we make these Xanadu Twitter comparisons, is that Xanadu
I
was
hope we'll stop. I hope we will stop.
Single point of view of a literary work, and then we had a discussion on glosses and how we have a singular literary work, and the glosses or the comments on that work are where the interactions occur. But that again is a singular point of view, not a cloud collective response, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. A marginal gloss on one document creates a new document which contains the point of view of the original author and the point of view of the commentator. But it still has the character of a unified point of view. Once you get once you put in a scramble, it's a different thing. It's a mess. Finding agreement and creating a unified point of view is tremendously difficult.
Right, I think we touched on that, finding a point of view. You mentioned a story from...
Well, in 1979, I got together my Xanadu team, and we worked out the design of what is now called Classic Xanadu. It took me weeks to persuade them of all the premises, essentially, that you wanted to have versions, you wanted to have that the document would be an assembly of parts used so that each new document would use the previous parts unchanged, and you would then be able to link, and they worked all of this into a single. Once they had accepted all these premises, they worked out a unified technical structure. But accepting the premises, this is an important and difficult issue.
And that was with, was it 5 people? You said?
5 more people.
5 more people gaining consensus over that.
Yes.
So when we expand this to this Twitter analogy, we're talking about hundreds of thousands
Well,
of millions.
getting unanimity. For example, the Nicene Creed, when I believe it was the Emperor Constantine. Yes, said, "Well, we're adopting Christianity. What is it?" And they held meetings for 13 years or something, and they finally decided. And it was this, and this, and it was an enormously political thing. So that's I think an outstanding historical example.
And we ran into that problem again when they translated that into local vernacular,
Yes,
right? And this
exactly.
happened after Vatican II, so gaining that consensus.
Every translation requires a new design by committee.
Yeah.
Yes, or every translation may slant. Okay, good. What do we talk about next?
We touched upon philosophy,
Yeah.
structure.
Yep.
Maybe a brief breakdown of your
General
schematics.
schematics. Yes.
And maybe just a bit of history on what that actually is.
Yep. So, my sophomore year in college, I was a true seeker after truth, right? And I found Swarthmore very thrilling because of the conversational atmosphere and the fact that you could go to lectures on any subject. And I was going to take the honors program, which meant narrowing down the last 2 years. So in my second year, I branched out to all the things that didn't teach at Swarthmore. I went to University of Pennsylvania for sociology, anthropology, and linguistics. And the linguistics was completely thrilling to me because that explained so much. So structural linguistics in those days, before Chomsky turned it in another direction. But I took the course with Zelig Harris, who was Chomsky's teacher. Structural linguistics, he assigned a book by Bloomfield. It told you how to go into an island in the Pacific, say, and create a written language for that new language in a few weeks. So here's what you look for: phonemes, morphemes, and syntax, and all these unique structures. Now, previously, linguistics had been based upon Greek. Everybody in Europe thought that Greek was the perfect language, and everything diverged from that in some degree, which is preposterous. Actually, the Indian linguists and Panini had thought of this long before, but it was rediscovered by the structural linguistics, especially Bloomfield and Sapir. And they said, okay, you have phonemes. So a phoneme is the constituent sounds of a language. A morpheme is the constituent combinations of sounds that have meaning. So that includes words. But some morphemes can't appear by themselves, like ing in English. You can't say ing. So it has to be bound to a verb. And so that's a bound morpheme. And some languages have only bound morphemes, which means they have no words, except when assembled as bound morphemes. Well, I found this extremely thrilling, because what it represented was looking at a complex area, language, and finding the intrinsic structures within that language. So 2 years later, I took a course with a marvelously charismatic philosopher named Michael Scriven, and he understood every word I said, which nobody ever had before, and I understood pretty much what he said, which most people didn't. And I wrote a paper for him about this, but it wasn't clear because I didn't use the structural linguistics analogy, which I should have. And I called it Schematics, Systematics, Normatics. And what it was about the abstractive process of finding structure and how to represent structure. Now here's an interesting contrast, because in a way my favorite philosopher is Heraclitus. Let's back up. Historically, the Greeks and the Romans looked up to Plato, who had this idiotic idea that everything had a perfect model. So you had a perfect cat and a perfect democracy. When you don't have a perfect cat, they vary. That's evolution. And a perfect democracy, well, maybe not, maybe yes, maybe no. But Plato had all this, and then Aristotle studied under Plato and came up with a completely different philosophy, which was enumerating things, just one enumeration after another, and all hierarchical. So neither of these satisfied me. But my favorite philosopher became Heraclitus, who said, you can't step in the same river twice because everything is changing, everything is in flux. Look around you, there's all that complication and all those connections, and they're forever changing. When I was 5 years old, I had an experience, I have to tell this all the time. I put my hand in the water and I felt the water moving around my fingers and reconnecting. But the molecules, I didn't know the word molecules, the molecules at the beginning were no longer connected to the same molecules. So it's very similar, but it's very different. And how could you represent that? So that was my great philosophical insight at the age of 5. And so that combined the Heraclitean position that everything is changing with the structuralist position of here are the fixed connections. And so anyway, in the paper Schematics, Systematics, Normatics, I tried to present a way of structurally modeling everything in terms of entities and relations. Now, I didn't say it that way. And in a way, I was anticipating semantic nets and a lot of other things. And I used the word normatics, which I thought I'd made up, but it turned out it had been in the dictionary before, meaning all issues having to do with should, ethics, morality, moral theory, and so on. And all of these as structural representations. Well, so that was schematic philosophy, and I have tried to write it as a book numerous times in my life. There's one manuscript on the Internet Archive, huge cut and paste cut and paste in the old sense. I cut up the writings and put them in order, and that's so. This has had various titles. At first I was going to call it Truth, Man, and Choice. Then I was going to call it The Whole Thing. And then I was going to call it Principia Schematica. And I've stopped trying to write it. But the point is that you have the vastness of existence and the need for structure. And representing that structure is an abstractive process in which you come to a structure. And then so talking about then structures and how they represent reality, how they leave things out, how they blur, how they have ramifications, all of this, that is schematic philosophy. Well, years later, this went into my PhD thesis at Keio University, which is available online. It's called Philosophy of Hypertext, and that is available. I think it's on Amazon, but also from lulu.com. I get a little more money at the same price I get from Lulu. And that is, again, one attempt to say all of these things. I think I've said it rather well because I said it quickly just now, about the problems of the vastness of interconnection and reality, and the extreme difficulty of representing it. Now let's take this down to the Xanadu notion. In the evolved form represented by Xanadu Space, which you can see in Xanadu Basics 2, and you can download it also at the Internet Archive. So Xanadu Space is a system of interconnection where you can show and follow both the links and the transclusions between a set of pages created by an author. And so that is the Xanadu model of a document, which is a series of pages connected by an author with connections or Xanalinks put there by the author, as well as the availability of the original content, which is transclusion. So that was the high point of the Xanadu development, and unfortunately Rob Smith did a fabulous job, eventually dropped the product because the pieces didn't fit together quite right. You know, he was using this library and that OpenGL and I forget what else, and it was leaky at the edges and did not perform in the way it should have, and he must have done 30 iterations, and they're all available, but getting that, I would love to have that rebuilt if someone would rebuild it, but I haven't the time or the supervision capacity. So that's schematic philosophy and how it reduced to the Xanadu model, which is to say that we are representing literature, we're creating a literary genre in which connections can be shown. But rather than trying to show a huge panoply of connections across all of some topic, we're allowing the author to show specific connections between specific pages that the author is assembling, and thereby to create a unified literary package representing certain connections and extending the notion of sequential text by additional sequential text, therefore not too crushing and challenging to the reader.
Yeah, I've heard you use the language abstract thought clouds before in relation to Xanadu. Is that a term that you use, or like the representation of abstract thought clouds?
I'm not sure that. The point is that your thoughts can go in all directions and have many connections. Writing is the process. Writing and speaking is the process of cutting those connections in order to produce a single stream of words, and the reader or listener is then reconvening, reassembling those words and those connections in their own mind. So this is the process of writing and speaking, and as I've said, trying to create a literary genre which extends this cleanly and simply has been my objective. But thought cloud, yeah, thought is a cloud, and you're always wandering through it.
We have I guess I can man the comments.
Are there comments?
We have some
Good.
comments coming.
All right.
In.
Hi there.
We have some praise of Principia Schematica as the name, maybe a favorite.
Thank you.
We also have the quote I've heard: "All models are wrong, but some are useful."
Who said that?
George Box.
Good. Well, I don't know if that's correct or not, but it's I suppose it's as an approximation, it's very good.
Yeah.
Some models are right, meaning that if I tell you how to get to a certain place, or draw you a map, and you get there, that model is right for
that instance.
So the map was useful,
Yep.
and we sometimes we run into an issue of mistaking the map for the character.
And that was classically Korzybski, and unfortunately I mentioned that in an essay that I was put up for a MacArthur Award 30 years ago by a friend, and this was my essay on Korzybski was handed to the guy who was in charge of MacArthur at that time, which was Murray Gell-Mann of the Corps. And Gell-Mann looks and says, "What? Korzybski never mentioned this man Nelson to me again." All I was talking to say was the map is not the territory, but just the name Korzybski ended my possibility of a MacArthur fellowship.
Now, some of, and correct me if I'm wrong, which is why we're here, when your explanation of Xanadu sounds almost analogous to modern quantum field theory of objects in fields, but the objects are the literary works themselves.
Well, since I know nothing about quantum theory, I can't possibly comment on that.
Fair enough. If anybody knows anything, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, and I guess maybe the like information is out there, the information space as kind of the substrate within which documents exist.
Right.
Is that kind
As
of what
the
you're going
field,
for? So in a physical sense, in the quantum physics, right, what the claim is that this is a unified field, right, in a very Heraclitus method.
Well, my understanding is the word field in physics is a clever ruse to refer to action at a distance.
At a distance,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes, and
So a
within
magnetic
this-
field, a gravitational field is action at a distance.
So there's action at all distances in all directions all at once, sort of.
Yeah.
Similar to thoughts.
I wouldn't argue that.
Similar to thoughts. So in this space of action occurring indefinitely between all points, or infinitely.
Well, I'm not interacting with a certain person in Bangladesh right now. So, but except gravitationally, and that's
yeah,
Bangladesh.
exactly. Or arguably maybe, right? But in a mapping this to the Xanadu model, or even like thought space, is I think where the connection, the parallels could be drawn artistically drawn. Artistically drawn.
Well, as soon as you get artistic,
It's very
then
loose.
Any
Well, that's
quantum physicists out there, just turn off the stream for the next 5
get
minutes.
artistic, and all bets are off. Yeah.
So it could be drawn to where you have a literary document, you have a like you said, a sequential piece of text outlining a point of view, and this is pulled from the boundless sea of thought and idea.
Well, the boundless sea of previous documents.
So there is a document now that is an object. It's just like this is an object, but that's just a structural representation of some portion of this field.
The points of the field are getting pulled into, and now we have a structure.
You could say that, but to me, nevertheless, a document has a character that fields do not. It's something you can look at on the screen and hold in your hand.
Right.
And it has an author and a point of view.
So,
and by the way, point of view is like an accent. If you say a document has no point of view, that's like saying a person has no accent, which means this person has your accent.
Interesting. Point of view disappears when you share it. So,
yeah, you're not aware of the point of view
register it
because you both have the same point of view.
Interesting. So really what you notice in the conversation perhaps is difference in opinion,
Yes.
not similarity.
Yes.
Yeah.
which is kind of how we got into this strip, which was a very stark difference in
of point of
opinion.
view.
Stuck around.
That makes for a much more interesting conversation. So on extending the concept, Xanadu, as I can now transclude any number of documents into my new document and create a new document. If we take that idea and we extend it to the point where you have lots and lots and lots of documents being created simultaneously, creating this very this like forest or like tree, this very thick tree of transcripted documents. Like, what was your vision for Xanadu gets released tomorrow? What's it look like 10 years later when you have this as an actual literary medium?
How do I know? Who can predict the future? Right. And we thought the truth would bubble to the top, and just make all viewpoints available, and surely we'll all agree. How sweet that was.
We also,
That's even without liars.
yeah.
Even without liars, coming to agreement on the truth is not easy.
We'd also chatted about the law and intellectual property and rights. Is Xanadu, in your opinion, or what are your thoughts on that as a rights management?
Well,
platform?
the point, the original, I would like credit for the breadth of the original concept, which when we thought we would be the ISP of the future, because I invented the ISP, it was my idea. Nobody imagined storage of documents on networks, let alone managing them with copyright. I tried to bring this up to my boss at Harcourt Racing World and got fired. The point being that in the original Xanadu model, you would store content, and each downloader would pay. If there was a payment, a micro paywall attached to that particular content, would pay micropayment. Another word I coined.
Yeah.
And so if you didn't pay, it wouldn't arrive. Now people denounced me for this. Well, hell, I was trying to create a viable publishing industry, and for that you need a payment system, and this seemed to me the fairest possible way to do it, because you didn't have to have a micro paywall. It could be, of course, be free, and you could set your own price. So the point is that this was you would assemble, since a document was a collage to be brought in by the client from different sources. Then that which had a paywall, then you either paid for or didn't receive. What could be fairer? And that was the concept of it. And what is the copyright doctrine? Well, I formulated it under the name transcopyright, which means, which simply translates as, you may reuse this virtually in any new context provided you only give out the address and that the user downloads it from my server. That leaves out the matter of the paywall, but it's implicit. So that's the transcopyright doctrine. And it needs to be understood in fairness, even though obviously that's not the way the world has gone. I would like credit for having thought out a complete system in this way.
Yeah, and that goes back to when we were talking about these institutions being ported in this new world and not adapted. So what you're talking about is essentially a brand new sui generis method of
It's
rights.
an old brand new.
Brand new, but it doesn't exist in any way, shape, or form. But it sounds...
We implemented it completely at Keio University in Japan in 1990 something.
Yeah.
I think 8, something like that, under the name Hypertransaction System, and got $1 million from Meaty, and it was written in Perl. It had client, server, micropayment, all of it, and that code still exists somewhere.
Somewhere, but we don't know.
Yeah, but the point is, it's not deployed.
Somebody should reach out maybe to the university.
Well, yeah, but getting it up as a demo is different from getting it serious. Yeah. But it was a complete system, and it was essentially endorsed by the Japanese government through Meaty, which was pretty good.
Have you had any other thoughts or projects like this that are rarely talked about? This is something I've never heard when it
Well,
comes
that is part of the Xanadu chain. Yeah. But there have been many instantiations, and many attempts, and many flailing attempts to get it going later. But I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
My other main invention is called Zigzag, which is a multi-dimensional combination of database and spreadsheet, where you essentially cut the cells free to connect any way they like, provided they're in a spreadsheet. You have horizontal dimension and vertical dimension. So now you cut those free and allow each cell to connect horizontally and vertically to any other cell. So you can create new structure. I mean, why are spreadsheets rectangular? Consider the periodic table. It has two elements in the top row, hydrogen and helium, but it's rectangular because that's the way spreadsheets work.
Yeah.
And the point is,
It's the paper metaphor. Survival.
I don't like the word metaphor, but paper model, yeah. And so cutting them free creates a remarkable system and structure, and there are several videos about that on my YouTube. And that is still downloadable from xanadu.com/zigzag as the Zigzag Starter Kit, or GZE Starter Kit. It requires Java, and they keep changing Java, so, because, write once, run anywhere did not work, and they keep changing Java, so I don't know what Java it works with still. It really works well on Windows 7.
Yeah, the paper metaphor, again, is going back to old models we've been using in a virtual abstract space,
Yep.
and they don't appear to work
Right.
or appear to utilize.
Yep.
I was talking about this yesterday, about Stanley Kubrick talking about film and how we've essentially put theatrical plays on film and haven't utilized the medium to its full extent, and I feel like a lot of your work that we're talking about now doesn't utilize
I would say, yeah.
right, to its fullest extent by any means.
Right.
Right? We've taken things like paper, traditional copyrights, and institutions, and just ported them with a login page.
And also, the point is, I didn't get the leverage from being with a Microsoft or a
Right.
company that would support this. Xanadu was with Autodesk, and if we hadn't screwed up, we would have gotten it out in 1988.
Right?
There's the concept of skeuomorphism. I don't know if you're familiar with that term.
I forgot.
Which is,
I've seen
that's
it.
on the original iPhone, when you open the Notes app, you had the little spiral down the left side and make it look like a notebook. You have this kind of skeuomorphism as the virtuality, but an intentional physical showing of digital stuff.
Music player looked like a radio with dials in the iPhone, which I think is a great way to bootstrap the application for user adoption.
To
But
transition
eventually,
people.
we need to get rid of that.
My proposed visualization for time. Okay, you have little clocks and little calendars. Hello. So a clock represents the time cycle of 12 hours of the day, and a calendar represents the time cycle of a week or a month. Hey, time is continuum, very long. So what's an appropriate visualization? I would say a spiral. I would say it's a continuum. But you want to be able to populate this continuum with cells representing units of time. You want to be able to annotate them, and so that was my spiral time design. And you want to be able to turn it so you can see a spiral, for example, of a year, with the individual months each being a loop of that spiral. And then you could, for example, the first of the months and the full moons could be marked, and you could see how they interact. But then you open it up to thousands of years. So that was the spiral time model. And so that there actually was somewhere a VRML representation. The VRML was a 3D that came up in the browser. And I haven't seen that lately.
Of your spiral time?
Yeah, there was a spiral time. I mean,
You have it
only
drawn
partial,
out,
only
documented?
partial. I have not. Yes, but not that I know of.
Yeah.
I mean, I have huge archives and no time to go. I make time to go through them, but how much more time I can make to go through them, I don't know. Yeah. Are there other questions? What's happening?
We have a question here. Your view on the role
We
of
should probably wind down.
wind down.
Yeah.
View of randomness or stochasticity in the Xanadu.
None.
Sure.
No, I believe in the author's models, and the author is not random. I mean, not a real author.
But I think what I've taken away is it takes away a lot of uncertainty, right?
What?
In that, with the Xanadu model or something,
Yeah.
so it's not random
Right.
at all, it's purposeful,
Yeah.
It reduces ambiguity.
Well, but it represents a point of view.
which is discrete
Yeah.
and singular.
And presumably consistent, but not necessarily.
Yeah, the only last question here, which is actually the last question from Hypercast number 2 as well, which was your view on the role of love.
Well, that's interesting that I should come up with that again. Love is important. We've evolved to need it, to give it, and it helps a lot. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for
Thanks.
tuning in.
Thanks,
Last
Ted.
minute stream, and we'll see you next time.